Hello everyone and welcome back to the Mosh Pit Reviews, where yours truly, ThrashManiac99, reviews metal albums in the calendar year of 2019. Well, basically how it all works for those who are new to this album review series of sorts. Basically, whenever there's a bunch of albums coming out in a certain week, I put up a poll in the community tab of my YouTube page, which if you click on the channel link and go to the community section, every now and then you'll see a poll come up for albums you would like me to review on the channel, while the rest of them will get like mini reviews over on Twitter. For those who haven't followed me on Twitter yet, what are you waiting for? Go follow me at ThrashManiac99, where sometimes I go on rants, review albums, and basically gush over Zev Bellringer. But beside the point, so for this episode of the Mosh Pit Reviews, this is probably going to be maybe the big one of the year. I don't know, there's a couple other albums coming out in the month that are going to be big, like Killswitch Engage next week. And then at the end of the month, Tool finally releases their new album, and I know, Caleb, you're watching this, you're waiting for me to talk about it. Well, it's bound to happen. But for today, we're reviewing probably the most popular album of the year so far for a mainstream metal fan, and that is Slipknot's We Are Not Your Kind. Now, before we talk about this album, there has been a lot of drama going on with Slipknot, particularly involving former member Chris Fiend, or Fiane, I'm terrible at names at times. Chris, the guy with the long nose mask, the dick mask, you could call it. Basically, there's been some drama with him. Either people think that this is all a publicity stunt, or there was an actual lawsuit going on between Chris and the rest of the band, and nobody knows what the hell is really happening. But last year, they released a single called All Out Life, which was basically like a groove metal, thrash metal single that's actually really catchy and really good, that ended up becoming the WWE NXT theme song now, which is really cool. About time they got rid of that crappy song they had before. But beside the point, after All Out Life came out, people were talking, is Slipknot actually going to release a new album? And sure enough, earlier this year they announced they are, and actually named it after a lyric in All Out Life called We Are Not Your Kind. Now, it would have been fun if All Out Life actually made the standard edition of this album, but for those who live in Japan, it's a bonus track on the Japanese release. So at least there's that for you. But now let's talk about the actual music itself. Now, one thing that you're definitely going to notice is that 3 songs, Insert Coin, Death Because of Death, and What's Next, are essentially like intros or bridging songs to transition from one song to another, whereas Insert Coin, for example, is more of an introduction track that leads into Unsainted, which was the first big single off of this album, and I have to say, one of the best songs on the album, and maybe one of the best Slipknot songs ever. It's so catchy, it's thrashy, it's groovy, it's fun. Corey's snarl and clean vocals are top notch. Plus that chorus is so catchy, you just can't help but love it. But then as we go along throughout the album, you're gonna notice that also when you look at the track listing, you got 14 songs in a total of 63 minutes. That's quite compact for an album in Slipknot's career. But some of the highlights of the album for me were songs like Birth of the Cruel, which was, I think, the latest single they put out before the album came out last week. And it's not a bad single, but I feel it pales in comparison to Unsainted. Nero Forte is probably one of the 3 best songs of the album. It has that aggression that you love from Slipknot, but also a lot of melody that you love from Slipknot, and it can also harken you back to the days of Volume 3 and All Hope Is Gone in terms of the melody. Or you could even think of it as a little bit of Stone Sour thrown into the mix because of how Corey goes in his melodic vocal approach. Critical Darling kind of follows a similar style to Nero Forte, but it's a decent track, but I do feel Nero Forte blew it out of the water. But the middle of the album, the song A Liar's Funeral. While being a combination of melody, with it being a combination of melody and just an absolute brutal heaviness to it, it's probably the darkest song of the album, and also I think Corey Taylor's best vocal performance on the album came from this song in terms of both his clean vocals, but most importantly, his growl on this song is so brutal. Like, Corey Taylor's always, in my mind, when it comes to extreme metal vocal styles, quite underrated, and I feel the reason why is because a lot of people kind of give him crap for some things he says to the press, or some of the lyrics, including a bunch of expletives, which you kind of expect that at this point from Corey Taylor. But as far as an actual vocalist, I think he's very underrated. He's got a really good melodic vocal and an underrated guttural vocal. Well, maybe not guttural in the sense of guys like John Gallagher from Dying Fetus or Joe Ficek of Broken Hope, but it has that low register to it that I do really like, and A Liar's Funeral certainly showcases the best of both worlds, in my opinion. Now, the first half of this album I felt was very, very strong, but things start to taper off once we get into the second half of the album. While the following track, A Red Flag, certainly was more aggressive than A Liar's Funeral, and it is very thrashy at times and groovy at times, I feel it was pales in comparison to A Liar's Funeral. And after the What's Next bridging song, we get to the song Spiders, which I really like how this song would be fitting for like a horror movie soundtrack, so to speak, because it kind of has that vibe of it's supposed to be disturbing and scary, it's supposed to terrify you as far as the lyrical matter and its overall atmosphere. And also, not to mention, and my good buddy Cover Killer Nation pointed this out in his review of the album, that it's very creative, and I would have to agree with that. So then after Spiders, we get into 3 songs that are 6 minutes or close to 7. Orphan, My Pain, and Not Long for This World. And just in my opinion, the song My Pain, which even though it was the longest song of the album at 6 minutes 48 seconds, definitely in my opinion felt like the weakest song of the album, because it mostly was kind of conjuring like an industrial-esque atmosphere, and it to me just didn't quite work. The song Orphan, on the other hand, definitely was the strongest of the 3, and it has a little bit of that almost new metal vibe to it with some of the riffs and the grooves that are included, in which there are moments on this album where it feels like new metal, but not really. Then again, Slipknot don't consider themselves to be new metal, even though the first couple of albums certainly was in that vein, but they've definitely evolved far past the new metal sound. Not Long for This World, however, while it was definitely a decent enough song, it didn't hit me in the sweet spot to really propel it higher up on like the rankings for the songs on this album. And also, I wanted to point this note out before I give the final score in the edit, that as far as the overall album in terms of the songs, the length of the album, I feel like some of those songs, especially in the second half, would have benefited if they were cut back a little bit and taken away some of those like build-up moments in the beginning and the end of the songs, so that way the songs would feel more compact, and also maybe cut some of those like introductory or bridging songs out, and because 63 minutes is a bit too long, especially for a band who has this kind of a sound like Slipknot. So I definitely felt like if the album was cut down to maybe 53 minutes, then maybe the album would have definitely been better as a result. So now, overall as an entire piece of work, Jim Root, the guitarist, talked about in an interview prior to the album coming out that today more people want singles, but he and the rest of the band wanted to create an album experience. And certainly I feel the album did exactly what it was meant to do, and that's create some different elements for each type of listener of metal to get into. Now, of course, for the purists, they'll probably write this album off as just, oh, it's just another Slipknot album. Well, you could say it sounds like another Slipknot album, but it's also not really. It kind of, more or less, kind of combines almost everything the band has ever done on their previous albums. Like it, and I think one commenter I saw on Cover Killer Nation's review kind of put it together perfectly. It combines the madness of the self-titled debut, the heaviness of Iowa, the catchy songwriting of Volume 3, the melodies of All Hope Is Gone, and the modern influence of 0.5 Chapter. And I feel that definitely was what this album was all about, but also another note. Probably the band's most experimental album. They tried a lot of different things. They tried going into some old school influence, some thrash, some death metal, some groove, some industrial, some atmospheric songs. While some of it may not have worked, some of it definitely stuck. It was almost like this album was taking a bunch of spaghetti, throwing it up against the wall and seeing how much would stick, and about 80% of it stuck, I would say. So as far as an overall score, I would give this album a 31 out of 40. Definitely probably the best Slipknot album since All Hope Is Gone, in my opinion. Like, 0.5 Chapter was a decent album, however, it lacked, in my opinion, as far as replayability. It just, I never really went back to it, because there wasn't really any standout songs on that album, in my opinion. Whereas, here, you got quite a few standout songs. Unsainted, Birth of the Cruel, Nero Forte, and A Liar's Funeral. Those would probably be my 4 favorite songs on the album that I would definitely go back and listen to more. So yeah, 31 out of 40. Definitely a really good album for Slipknot at this stage in their career. What did you guys think of We Are Not Your Kind by Slipknot? Let me know in the comments below, and I'm pretty sure I'm probably going to get some why are you talking about this album comments from like the metal purists. Well, it's what the people wanted me to check out, and to be honest with you, even if you're a metal purist, I'd say give it a chance, and if you don't like it, you don't have to listen to it again, but if you do end up liking it, well, that's all on you. Thank you guys for watching. As far as what I'm going to check out this upcoming week, well, there's a poll on my YouTube page in the community tab. We got options of Devourment, Killswitch Engage, Twilight Force, Hammerfall, and I forget what else that's on that list. And I still got quite a few albums from earlier in the year I gotta check out, like Warforged, Arch Matheos. Also some of the stuff from last week, like Pathology, Destruction, and Phobia. So I got a lot of listening to do. And we're in probably one of the big months of the year for metal. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. Peace out. And I will see you next time. And pray for me to get well from these sunburns.
And I know Hannah, I know her opinion about this, but I'm sorry. Number 4, Ghost prequel. Screw you! Screw you! Die! Die! Okay. Get out! No, I cannot continue. Now she's gone. Okay. Hannah, I'm sorry. I'm gonna probably. That's my number 3 request. You have no idea about music.